of the division with the extended leadership team next week. Okay, so by the end of next week, we should be fully rolled out, and we should even have some action plans already from some of the areas. So that's great. You all are working on those from your individual areas. We'll do, Alicia did a little bit of that action planning with the directors of student life before she left, and then I will do that with the extended leadership team for the whole division. So by the end of next week, or maybe the beginning of August, we'll begin to put together all of the actions for the whole division. So again, just a few rules. First, a little interpretation. What we're going to talk about today are both strengths and opportunities. What you are going to see are current year scores, but also compared to 2014. So that's an important part. There are some questions on this current year's survey that we did in February, beginning of February, that are directly comparable to last year's questions, and then there are a whole boatload that are not directly comparable. So we're going to be looking a lot at those comparisons because there's great news and great stories in those comparisons. Okay? Not really focused much on scores below a 4.0, and you'll see that when we hand out the papers. You're going to see the mean score. So if a mean score is a 4.0 or greater, I'm not going to focus a whole lot on that. Great, high scores are great, but they don't instruct us very much on what we're to do. Then anything that has a change score greater than 0.15 or less than 1.5 less. We're going to focus on those also, okay? So that kind of gives you the range of where we're thinking in terms of the impact that these have. Anything that's kind of less than that change score, may have changed because a few people, if you know anything about surveying and psychometrics, those kind of things, there's not much of a statistical difference there, but that starts getting to the point of impact. The first charts I'm going to show you are compared to the institutional mean, not to the division. And so in my analysis of this, there are a lot of things that we were either above or below the institution, but our change from last year to this year is really the most important part of that. Okay? And then the handout that you're going to get, and we'll go ahead and distribute that, the handout is not complete. Okay? I'm going to give you access to an electronic file that has all the questions on it, all the statistics on it, but the one that you are going to get, actually, I culled down kind of the most important pieces into that one. For some of you, it's a one-page front and back. For others of you, it's 2 pages because we had some technical problems with our printers this morning. Okay. So a few rules. We already talked about the first one, no titles, positions. I am only up here because I'm representing the leadership. I've done the study on this, and I'm going to kind of give you some of the results. But in terms of our relationship to each other, I don't want you to think about me as the vice president. I want you to think about me as a person who is concerned about making sure this is a great work environment. Okay? And same goes for any directors, anybody, they're not directors here, okay? Feedback is encouraged and expected, but it needs to be in a respectful and professional way. Some of these things are emotionally charged, right? When you see some of the results, you will expect me to be a little bit emotional about them, right? And I'm not. I'm intellectually stimulated about them. They give us indication of what we need to do, and that gives us information about the actions we can take. That's all these are, okay? Everybody can make a valuable contribution, but don't monopolize the time. So if you're one of those, many times extroverts tend to talk a lot, and they think as they're talking. Introverts go the opposite way. They think completely before they say anything, many times. That's broad generalizations. But we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity, okay? And then concrete examples are encouraged. So when I ask you questions, there are going to be some things I ask you like, okay, in this this part of the survey you said this, but in this part of the survey you said this, and I don't know how to reconcile those. Okay, I'd like concrete examples of those, because it may be that they're easily reconciled. But I'd like concrete examples. And then this is a two-way street. All of us have responsibilities of making this a better place. Okay? That means that it can't just be me doing everything or your directors doing everything to make this a good workplace for you. It is you participating also. And a big part of your participation is the feedback during the rollout process so the directors and AVPs and I know what to do to make it better. Okay? So does that make sense? Everybody kind of abide by those rules? Anybody wants to stand up and say, no, you can't? No, I'm just joking. Okay, so let's get into it. These are the strengths that were demonstrated in the material that I gave you a couple days ago. Okay? So, not going to read much into this, but there's a lot in here about institutional leader. That's at the AVP level. When you took the survey, the institutional leader, there's a lot in here about that. We are sad to see Alicia go. She's a great leader, made great impact in a very, very short time. If you don't know, she took a job as a vice president at College of Charleston. Super, super job. And so but she made a great impact, and this reflects it a lot. Okay, this is the first time then you've seen this scale. Okay, remember the scale of a 0.15 or greater is significant. It's a significant impact, and those are clear out to the 0.60. Okay, so obviously lots of impact there. Opportunities for growth. Now, SL does not mean Scot Lingrell, but it's close. Okay? SL means senior leader. In this iteration of the survey, it actually paired Dr. Marrero and me together. There's been a lot of feedback about not liking that. I was one of them that didn't like it. You know, I don't want his scores to draw me down. So anyway, that is all senior leader, your senior leadership, me and Dr. Marrero together. Okay. Again, same deal here. 0.15 or greater. That's significant. It's something we need to pay attention to. But what I want to draw your attention to in this, though, is that this is compared to the institutional mean. So other people that answered this were answering about their vice president and the president. Okay? So this isn't just how low we are, and gosh, it's really low in our division. It's a comparison to the rest of the university. And so to the extent that other people answered their questions in a way about their vice presidents and the president, these are your scores and different than that. Okay? So there are several things up here that are really interesting where we are different from the university, and you'll see this in our analysis, but we're different from the university, but we've actually increased and are really actually pretty good. There are just some places in the university that are better in those areas. So the message I want you to get is we're going to talk about some things that actually aren't on here, and it's because this is showing a difference of our division to the university, and the things we're going to talk about are our division compared to last year and where we're moving forward in a lot of these things. So, make sense? Okay. Again, anytime during this, if you have any questions, please just raise your hand, shout it out, whatever. I want to make sure it's clear as we're going through. There are quite a few people in here that weren't here for the last year's rollout, and if you haven't been involved with it, it may become unclear. So a few of the areas based on these changes that I was talking about. So the sheets that you have that I want to point out. For instance, this year we were 0.36 below last year's score on this item called "I feel a sense of pride when I tell people where I work." Okay, so that you can expect that I would be concerned that went down in a year that we did so much work on helping people feel better about where they're working and being engaged. Some of the positive ones here: university invest in my individual development and my professional development out there in the end. That was a clear message, and I know I gave you a message about how much we spend on professional development, but these survey results were given before I even gave that message. So you guys already felt that. You already knew that we were invested in you in that way. And I'm given credit for my contributions and achievements. That's a pretty important cultural climate piece, right? That you feel like you're getting credit for the things that you're achieving. So again, this is just nitpicking some of those things that had really huge effect. Another area is this area of climate change. Employees here are treated better than employees at other academic institutions. I'm not so sure about that question because sometimes we don't know how employees at other institutions are being treated, but obviously we did well on that. Faculty are treated fairly at UWG. Now this was an interesting one for me. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but you, as a division, as a subdivision, said negatively that they are not treated fairly at UWG. I'm sorry. You said faculty are treated fairly at UWG. You answered that in the negative. And I'm interested from you, and this is where I want your feedback. Why would that have been? Why do you think that is your perception? Okay, so Tim says they're treated differently, and that may be considered unfair. Is that a good interpretation? Because they're treated so much better. Others?
I feel it's a lot to do with the faculty and the student affairs program. We interact with them regularly, and we feel like, I personally felt like they don't have a home base within counseling. And I felt like they sometimes are getting the short end of the shaft. I think that's why I know I would have looked at that question as negative. Right,
so there are two different interpretations that got us to that score, and two different Tims, T2. So that gives you a little bit of a thought about, okay, so it could be that they really are being treated unfairly, or that they're being treated more fairly than the rater, whoever answered the question. Any other interpretations out there? 3 is the middle of 5. So if in the middle, if you didn't have an NA option, you put a 3, that's not necessarily good, right? So it drops it down. Okay. So you see the concept of this testing piece. By the way, that was another piece of feedback. I think on next year's survey, you'll have an NA, right? University is consistent in handling issues for all employees. This one really surprised me because we worked really hard on this idea of consistency over this last year. So I want to, concrete examples. Again, doors shut, confidential, what's said in here stays in here. But what does that mean, that we're not consistent in handling issues for all employees?
So when I answered that question, I kind of looked at my colleagues in other departments and issues that they were dealing with employees. And so seeing how issues are handled in one department versus another.
Okay, so even within our division or across divisions, that the way you handle something, there's no real consistency or procedure or policy that drives you to do that so that it's the same in another area. I think that's fair. In a siloed organization, many times you get people just figuring it out on their own, right? No ill intent, it's just they're doing it differently because that's the way they figured it out. And we've not given that much direction on certain things. Now I will say, kind of as a side to that, I've experienced West Georgia very, very much as a place where people resist requirements, where people resist that consistency because it gives them less autonomy at times. And I've experienced it here at West Georgia a lot more than other places where I've worked, where some of this stuff just comes out of HR and that's the way you do it. Here we get a lot of autonomy, but it creates maybe this inconsistency. And other things, yeah?
There's so much change in HR that their guidelines just seem to be changing like a revolving door. If you don't like an answer, call back tomorrow.
We talk about that a lot at the VP level when we're talking about Engage West and the comments and the results. That's coming up. So I want you to know that it's not something you can turn on a dime, but it is something that when the culture then begins to support it, then you can do that. And you've seen more of these, and you'll see more as we get a consistent HR payroll system. There'll be requirements of things to do. And again, if we resist those requirements all the time, then we get back to this inconsistency. So we have to kind of play along with that a little bit. Other pieces of this consistency, other concrete examples.
Just off the Gary's comment, I think that the autonomy piece, but I think that just the staff level, the employee level, not the person with the autonomy, I think maybe that's where some of that. It's not a particular example, but I think it's Carrie run her department one way, someone else runs her department, but as a staff member that may be how they're autonomously handling it, that's where some of that.
So that's where it gets picked up, is that you know that someone in Carrie's department had a similar situation, it was handled differently than yours, and that's inconsistency. Neither of them may be wrong or right, it's just inconsistent. And I think that's probably accurate, right? That's one of the reasons why we're putting together at the division level a hiring protocol. That's one of the reasons why we will haven't announced it yet, the members of it, but a kind of a standards of behavior type of a committee that looks at that consistency, promotion and recognition, those kind of consistent things across the university. We're doing better and better at those, but still, we're a large organization. It's hard to get everything that consistent. How about discrimination is not tolerated? That was an interesting one to me, that we went down so far. Now, I did think last year we were very high, so this is the relative drop, and we're consistent now with the university in terms of our score, and you can see it on that sheet. We're like 0.1 or 0.01 down from the university mean on that item. But I want to hear what you mean when you answer that question, or what your state of mind was when you answered that question.
I believe the survey question should have been more specific to what type of discrimination, because that's sort of a very generalized. So you could say professionally I feel discriminated because of this person and this person being both equally prepared academically, but getting different types of benefits. So it's not necessarily a type of, per se, ethnic discrimination, but it could be a legal discrimination. So I think the question was a little bit too vague for you to answer specifically that. Or I'm new, I'm 22 years old, coming into a profession, and just recently graduated. Because of my youth, I can be discriminated because I'm perceived as being inexperienced, whereas I may have some great talents that I've accumulated over the years that are modern ones. So as someone who's been there for 4 decades.
So I agree with you. These were 5 different questions on last year's survey. They boiled them into this one, and I think we did get a result then that was broader, not as instructive. This doesn't give me a whole lot, other than these conversations, this doesn't give me a whole lot. I like that explanation because it could be anything. You know, I don't get a parking space, you know, my own parking space. That's discrimination.
I just removed the cone.
The cone? You just removed the cone. I like it. Yeah. How about others? Yeah, Steve.
I just hope next year they'll go back to something a little bit more specific, because I think he's right, because you're right, the previous year, they kind of outlined different types of discrimination. So unless someone placed it in their comment section more specifically, you just don't know.
You don't see it. And I will say, we are about ready, the president's about ready to come out with the comment summary. You know, we don't give the exact comments because it may identify people, but, and we didn't even see everything in that. Studer kind of scrubbed all that before we got even to look at the themes. But there really wasn't that piece of discrimination in there. And I thought by this score that we would see a lot of comments about things, that something happened in this year. Because if you look back at last year's, every one of the 5 items or 6 items that this actually measures this year were actually pretty good. I mean, you're never perfect, you always want to be better, but they were actually not that far off the mean. And then here it drops to that. So let's move on, because I want to get to the sheet. Direction in student life, mission and goals. I have clear understanding the future direction of West Georgia. I think the strategic plan has helped with that. That's quite a bit of a change. I'm committed to the mission and goals of my own department. That was a good change. Again, it was pretty decent last year, but it went up. And then I'm encouraged by the progress I see in my division. That surprised me, that you have all of this, that all around you things are pretty decent, but that didn't extend to the division. So I really want to hear from you, encouraged about the progress I see in my division. What does that mean when that is below the score that we even had last year? And remember, Teflon here, I'm okay, I can take it. Yes.
I think that, this is perception, and we answer the question according to what we perceive happening. I think we've gotten a lot better in our own departments, in our communication, and we do know some of what's happening in our division. And this is not a surprise comment, but I do think that engaging in social media would allow us to see more of what we are doing in our division, because we're growing. We're a large university that I think is still tries to operate on a small college level, and I don't think we can do that anymore, because we get so busy with what we're doing in our day-to-day jobs, and then we never shared Engage West goals from different divisions.
Right.
So
yeah, I heard that loud and clear. That's why we're putting them all together. We'll be publishing those.
But hear kind of what housing is doing or what career services
I agree,
is doing
100%.
can help us see the bigger picture of what's happening in our division.
Great. Yeah, that's great feedback. Again, in a year where we've had some you've seen them up on the screen during staff development. We've had some great things happen. We have record enrollment. Our budget is sound. We've got new positions. We have earned the moniker of being in the top 15 or 30 last year divisions of student affairs in the country. Best places to work, and yet we're not seeing progress. So I really want to get to, what does that progress mean? Is it just communication? If it's just communication, again, we'll redouble our efforts for communication. How about others? Yes, Dawn.
I think sometimes there's confusion about what format are the goals in, and are the goals related to Engage West or to a strategic plan or this, and put them in a different format. And I can't remember where we're at. You know what I mean? Like, that sense of, are we spinning our wheels with that?
Write that down.
Noted.
No, it's not just about housing residence life. You are exactly right. Yeah, because this year the directors and I struggled because we had probably 4 or 5 different formats of goals getting ready for our submission to SACS, which will be September 8th, right? We just had a new change just in the last couple of weeks of last year's goals, right? And so that formatting kind of keeps everything kind of up and swirling. You're exactly right. To answer the first part of it, though, you don't know whether it's related to this, or this. The truth is it's related to all of them.
Right.
Because we have to have Engage West goals. We have to have strategic things that are related to the strategic scorecard of the division. And then there's all these other things we do that are not, they're related because they're related to student success, but you may not be able to draw a straight line back to the strategic plan. Making sure we're running the electric bills effectively in Greek Village. That's a thing we do, right? But it's not something, you can't really draw the line over here to strategic imperative 1 student success. We can mentally, but you can't just draw that line directly. So that's part of the confusion. But I will tell you, as these refine over time, that gets better. That gets better. And you'll be able to see this kind of progress. The question before, especially in the student life area, that people have been working on, what does the end product look like? What are we going for? And so the directors have been working with Alicia in the last 6 months on 8 themes of things we want. We know through the literature and student affairs, these are the things, the outcomes that we need students to have when they leave West Georgia. And so once you have those, then everything can start to align with that. Programs and services, all those kind of things can align with that. But it's messy in the time that you're doing it. Leadership, sincerity, transparency, communication, leadership. Senior leader are, remember it's 2 of us, sincere in wanting to know how I feel. Department leader is sincere in wanting to know how I feel. These are the results of just the student life area. And so I want to ask you a question. How can your department chair or your department leader, director, demonstrate to you that we care about how you feel? Okay, so a barbecue, we had one in the spring. We had an event, right? We had Spring Fling. How else do we demonstrate that we care about how you feel?
Maybe showing up at the individual departments and maybe bring some pizza.
I like it. So showing up at the individual departments. One of the
Smaller type thing, because when you're at a big function and you're there, but you're busy talking to everybody else, there's a lot of people, but if you do a smaller thing.
Okay, so can you write these down? Because this is an area that I really want to know. Really want to know. Thank you. Yes?
You said titles don't matter. However, we are a very large area. I am a coordinator in a department of 25 people. You're my vice president. I'm okay that you don't know how I feel today. I really am.
It may be preferable.
Yeah.
Actually.
This is something that, we talked in our rollout yesterday about and you said this goes both ways. So as student life, what are our actual expectations of you as our VP to actually care about how I feel? Like, in all honesty, I mean, I'm a coordinator in a very large area. Really? Like, I love that my director and associate director do it, but kind of a couple levels above me. Like, in reality.
Well, but what you're expressing isn't about my level above you. It's about my duties, my responsibilities, where I spend my time that is most effective for us as a division. I spend my time a lot getting resources for us so that we can perform the functions that we can do. My time also there are opportunity costs to every piece of time I spend, right? So the opportunity costs are when I'm doing one thing, I can't also do that other thing. And so finding those priorities, and the strategic plan has helped us a lot with that. Frankly, Engage West right now is helping me a lot with that. I spend my time differently in this year than I did any previous year because we have Engage West and because of their actions. Melissa, you had a
I was going to say the same thing. If the question said, I wish my senior leader was more sincere, or I want my senior leader to be more sincere in how I feel, then that would be one thing. But I didn't view this as a negative, that I would indicate, like, yes, I need more one-on-one time, or I need more touchy-feely. I viewed this as like, yeah, they may not, but I don't need that, or I don't seek that out right now to progress.
And that's great, but yet we have some of the largest gaps in this very item. So it's clear that there is an expectation that it'll be different than this. Where are we? Okay, 22. Yes,
We
Linda?
spoke a lot yesterday about your time, and well, and Stephen's time as well, but something, I don't know if Deb is here, but she brought up an example of how
Sure.
That's how I think it would.
And I'm not going to defend this because in that way, I don't want to sound defensive of this. But there are 16 direct functional areas, distinct student affairs functional areas in our division. 16 distinct. There are about 19 functions. So there are some of those functional areas that have multiple functions. For instance, CSI has volunteer programs, student activity, really related to student life programs, Greek life, right? So there are multiple functional areas that demand time. And so I have to be very sensitive to my work-life integration. I don't call it balance anymore. It's work-life integration. And understand where I then can fit into that. And going to all the events completely out of the realm, picking and choosing ones that are important is well within the realm, but you have to help me with that. I don't get invited to a lot of those events either. And then when I am invited to those events, if you really say, hey, this is the most important thing you can do for our department this year, pick 2 of those, I'll be there. I guarantee I will be there. But if you just say, come to all of our events and then be unhappy that I don't come to 80% of them, that may lead us to this result. That it's the 80% that I can't get to that drive your opinion about whether I want to know how you feel or not. Yes?
I think in our department, because we're counseling, and the question is, so-and-so is sincere in wanting to know how I feel. Like, one of the best techniques to use is just empathy. Like, I know sometimes the leaders come to our meetings, and when we're expressing whatever frustrations, we're not necessarily looking to get them solved or need them defended. Sometimes we just need someone to say, I know it's frustrating. And that, that's kind of what we do with our clients so that they know we're sincere and wanting to know how they feel.
Right.
We don't want to solve it or defend it. We just want to hold a space for it and say, gosh, I know that was really frustrating.
And so that is your frame for the way you want me to behave for you, right? Counselor 2. That's your frame for the way you want me to behave for you. And that's okay. And I am adapting, I'm getting better at that and understanding those, but it's hard to do individually. It's easier to do as a department, and I deal mostly with the directors of the department, right? And so what I want out of that then is a little bit of understanding that it's hard to do that individually. And as we broaden this more corporately, I do that. You don't hear it, but I have that feeling when I hear the demands and the issues that are out in our division. And I'm already on some other place over here getting resources to help it.
Well, and that's...
You may not see that part. You may not see that transformation that in the world.
I think one of the things that we also talked about was the timing of this was in such a way that we didn't have a lot of time to... I think I've seen a lot happen and a lot change since we took this Engage West. This particular...
Even this year.
Yeah.
I agree.
So,
because we only had 6 months of the previous stuff. Right, and we didn't even in that 6 months get out to all of your departmental meetings, as we said we would. We've gotten more since then, but yeah. So thanks for the break. I appreciate it.
Right. Well, my perception is when you go out and you problem solve and you get resources, I do perceive that as wanting, caring about how I feel. But not everybody makes that same connection. There are a lot of people that just need to be heard.
And that's why we're talking about it in here. And that's why also as I'm speaking with and working with directors and the extended leadership team on the rollout, that's something they need to model for me, right? Because one of the things I'm talking with them about, or we're talking together, is they need to be as concerned about senior leadership scores in their area as I am, because that's engagement of you, their employees, and they're concerned about your engagement. So they have to then be that senior leadership and that connection to senior leadership in your area, because I cannot do it with 250, 212 people at our division level. There's just no way to do that and actually do my job, right? And so they have to do that. We've talked about that, and we'll talk about that a little more in our rollout. But I was better at this when I was in the AVP job, of knowing everybody and something about everybody in the areas that reported to me. I'm not able to do that as much, but I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons why all of you did a one-page professional development plan this year. I have binders a binder of those in my department, in my office, that I look at. When I come out to your department, when I may be encountering you on the patio of the campus center doing planting or whatever stress busting that was, then that gives me some information to be able to engage with you. And I'm trying to do better at this. I am an ENTP, or an INTP. I'm an INTP, right? Those of you who know Myers-Briggs, the NT, it's just who I am. So I'm trying to be better at it because I know there is an expectation in those places. Okay. So we'll talk about these more. You should be talking about these in your own rollout too, a little bit. And that's it for the Prezi. Okay, now I need a little bit of props for the Prezi. The first time, Melissa actually did most of this for me. I did a little bit of the editing of it. But the truth is, the first time I attempted a Prezi, it literally took me an hour and a half to learn how to change the font. I mean, I'm so PowerPoint directed. Okay, so let's take a look at, is there another copy of that for me? Oh, I can take that one. Okay, so let's take a look at this, the data, okay? So again, this isn't all of it. This is some of it. It isn't all of it. These are some of the things I wanted to highlight. It follows loosely that 4.0, or minus, something less than 4.0, and plus or minus 0.15, but not specifically. So the first one is the one that was actually on the thing. I feel a sense of pride when I tell people where I work. We were still at, in your unit, 4.14, which is above the 4 point, but I wanted it on there because there was a big change from last year. Why? I want you to tell me why there was such a change from last year in the concept of being proud of where I work. Come on. Yes.
I'll say you need to consider your population who took this. I wasn't here when y'all took this the first time, and there's been a lot of onboarding and people leave, so your whole population has changed. So if you looked at the sense of pride compared to just who took it last year, and then brought in who took it this year, that might have an impact.
So the theory behind that is the people who had the most pride left.
Sure.
Right? But the question back here about us keeping valuable people, it's not that big of a change. So again, I'm having difficulty understanding why when you're out at Kroger and someone approaches you about West Georgia, that you don't have pride to say, I work there. And I'm glad that I work there.
I do, because I get a discount.
Well, you're new, so all the new people. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, Linda. Come on, be real with me, Linda.
We talked about this yesterday, and college came up, and it's really difficult when you go to the square, and it's all you think about, all you see is that there's a very nice technical college in this community. You don't see a lot about when people talk about going to Mayfest, and all you saw was the technical college. There was nothing about UWG. You go to events, and it's very underrepresented.
It's good feedback.
It's very disheartening.
Yeah.
To see, and I know I am very proud to say it.
Well, again, it's one of those things that individually we may, but as the question reads and as the stats come out, gosh, you know, it's just, but I agree. You're going to see a lot this year. The president, again, our number 3 imperative is, thank you, partnership success. I really expected a rousing partnership success, right? And a whole imperative is about that connection. I went with Melanie McClellan and a team to the Engagement Academy 3 weeks ago, 3, 4, maybe a month ago. And it was 4 intensive days about how to engage the community with the institution and how to do that. It's not just volunteerism. It's a lot of things, right? And the president has a new commission started in December that is the Carroll County Education Collaborative. It's all of the education and the chamber together trying to work on this community-based education stuff. So you're going to see a lot of that stuff coming up, but you're saying that may be part of the reason. Right. Well, but you say that, but then your example was that there is the words West Georgia Technical College on a building downtown. That doesn't say anything about them, right? Connection, right? And you're going to start seeing that. As a matter of fact, the new sign that is going up at the end, University of West Georgia. Just letting you know. Right, so you'll start seeing those. Others, what may be contributing to this? I really want meat. I want meat. I don't want this top level stuff. What's contributing to this? That you don't feel pride in working for us. Yes?
I think it's based on personal experience. It's right. Your experience may be different than my experience.
That's right. And so what in your personal experience then would lead you to have this connection? Or this, oh, it's not up there, it's on.
Maybe it could be for your experiences at work, your experience daily.
So your daily experience within your department even. Yeah, not the university as a whole, but where you are right now. Others.
So one of the things that came up when we were talking is how I don't have any idea what I put last year. And it would be sort of nice to kind of, when I took this year's, to know what I did last year. To have like a, you know, like how do I feel this year? And so a piece of it is when that survey comes out, what's going on in our world? And how we might feel on that particular day. Did I even eat breakfast? You know,
Right, and so the theory of testing and all of that is those are other things being equal, right? And when you write anything in terms of statistics, you can't take into account all the variables that may end up affecting this. It's whatever is the thing.
now for me, I feel a huge sense of pride. So this doesn't reflect how I feel. But I do hear from colleagues and stuff that we're not UGA. You know,
Never will be.
In the scheme of Georgia institutions or Ivy League institutions or whatever, that we have sort of like a redheaded stepchild kind of feeling that
I think we have in the
that I hear
past.
from colleagues. So
No offense to anybody who's redheaded. Yeah. just kidding. Yeah. Okay, how about others? Others. Yes, Dawn.
I might be perceived as belaboring Linda's point a little bit, but I feel it strongly, and it kind of relates to Terry's point as well, that, no, I don't expect that we're going to be UGA or Georgia Tech or an SEC kind of school, right? But we are not the shining gem of this community. Right. And when you go out in town, and this has happened, you know, I started here like kind of maybe 1 or 2 years after we were State University of West Georgia and then University of West Georgia, and if I say I work at the University of West Georgia, people kind of look at you for a minute and go, oh, you work at West Georgia College. Oh,
right.
Like the community is not kept up with who we have become. And that busts your bubble a little bit when you go out.
Sure.
Because what's the difference between West Georgia College and West Georgia Technical?
You know, community leaders are beginning to do this, though, because, and there's evidence of that a lot of evidence of that. Is it complete? Never will be. You work on it. It's like a marriage. You work on it all the time, right? We're about ready to, can't reveal too much in this, maybe you'll cite me for lack of transparency, but we're about ready to have a situation with the city and the county that's going to give significant resources to the university to do some of the important things that we need to do. Significant resources. And it will, they've given us land. The whole athletic complex, land, was given to us from the city. So there's evidence of it, but maybe we haven't been as good at really tying it together and showing that it's because of that. I mean, we really are at the table for all major community things now. So maybe it's communicating that and that we are at the table for those. Melissa.
I know that there's efforts, but I would love to see more, I think, promotion of the successes that we have within our students. And so I loved that there was the Alumni Association is the 30
Under 30,
that
yep.
was awesome, but I didn't see it around campus. Like, I would love to see the students thrown up there and visibly displayed for those successes, because that's huge.
Right. So there's something that happened in the fall because of that, but I understand what you're saying. It isn't as visible maybe. And Maggie Worth is trying to do a good job of getting those stories from us. And so maybe we need to be better at making sure she has those stories too. We're spending a lot of time on one item, so I'm going to keep going. We already talked about sincere and wanting to know how you feel. I would like, though, some techniques from you. Just email me, may use it, may not use it, but how I could demonstrate that I am sincere in wanting to know how you feel. Nikki's point's well taken. She doesn't care if I care how she feels. And that's a really NT type of a thing we got going with each other. But I really would. Something tangible that I can do that is not individual, that it has to be for each person, that I can demonstrate that. I thought things like birthday emails and anniversary emails were good towards that. You know, I did think that our once a term parties that we throw were good towards that, but maybe they're not doing enough. Mike?
I know the word sincere and feel make you think, or people to think about you as a person, but I wonder if people took it as my input or opinion on how something's done falls within that category too. It's not about me as a person. I just had to think about when I was sitting there reading it. I think I read it in the original sense as me as a person.
Sure.
But I wonder if it's my opinions on how something.
So more a broader context of, do they get my input as decisions are made, and that relates to almost everything else, transparency and communication, those kind of things. Again, a lot of that I rely on the directors to get for me, that I don't come directly to you a lot of times to get that, right? That if I did that, then we wouldn't really need directors, you know? And so that's the only reason it exists. No, I'm just joking. It's not. But that's really a role of the upline management to me too. So again, the expectation, if you have an expectation that I am going to come to you every time major decisions need made, I want to tell you, you should not have that expectation of me, okay? But in that sense, always want input, always want direction, and I seek that through the leadership so that I'm not overreaching. Because if I come to you all the time, then I'll be accused of overreaching and micromanaging, right? So I have to play that a little bit, right? Okay, let's keep going. I'm sorry. It's 11 o'clock. We're going to stop. It's a great conversation, but we have people that need to go. So, you know what? No, let's not do that. Let's not do that. I was going to say we can continue with those people who want to stay, but that's unfair to those that have to go. Take a look through this. I will also send you the entire, we have this for the every question, so you can kind of see the stats. Open questions, please, let's ask them, let's give feedback. Work within your directors to give feedback also, because that's where next week, I'm going to be rolling out at the division level. I'm going to be seeking answers to these same questions. So if you have great ideas about how to do this better, I want to hear them. I really do. But again, there's sometimes a method to do that is going to be more productive than direct interaction with me. Happy birthday. Happy birthday yesterday, Nikki. Anybody else's birthday this week? Who's that? Your birthday today? Oh, tomorrow. Well, happy birthday tomorrow. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.